Hello, class. I'm Cam Addis. I'm your instructor for ACC History Online. You can call me Cam or Dr. Addis or anything hopefully other than Caddis, which is what your phone may autocorrect to. It's also the prefix of my email. But anyway, I just wanted to give you kind of a lay of the land, as we used to say, kind of a broad overview of what Blackboard will look like, what the page will look like when you open it up. So I'm going to go ahead and open share here and we can take a look at your course. Now, if you are taking History 1302 or US History 2, your course will look a little bit different and it'll have a heading more like this. But many of you are in History 1301, and here you would have your particular 5-digit synonym number and 3-digit section number, even though this is maybe not your particular class that you're looking at here, but it'll look very similar to this. So if you look across this top horizontal menu, oftentimes if there is an announcement that I've just posted, that will be the very first thing you see, and you have to look at that announcement before you kind of get back here to the main content page. But announcements are a little different than messages. Messages are what you can send me individually, or I may individually message you. But announcements are more for the entire group. So we have over here, we have achievements, groups, analytics. You don't really need to worry about any of those three categories unless you're curious. Messages, like I said, are one-on-one. The grade book is up here as well, and this is an important thing for you to look at. This will have your running total up here in the upper right-hand corner, and then all of the basic assignments that you do for the course. If it has this little symbol here, that means that there's a rubric associated with it, particular grade rubric that's based on various categories. There's another one with a rubric down here. But you always want to click on View Attempt to see the feedback that I give you on any particular assignment. That doesn't include the exams, but any written assignments or anything like that. So if you have a hard time finding that feedback, just let me know and I can point it to you. I can point you in the right direction. So the grade book is up there. We got announcements. We got discussions here. If you have general questions about the course, or if you have a question about a particular exam item, you're always free to ask it here. Once in a while, I'll have students say, oh, there seem to be more than one right answer or something like that. That's never the case. There's either one right answer or all the other answers are demonstrably wrong or sort of the opposite. But if you have any sort of question about a test item, feel free to post it there. We also have the calendar. This is important, and you can look at this either in terms of due dates and have a kind of a vertical orientation there, or you can look at it in terms of schedule. Either way. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can go over to your main Blackboard page and go to calendar here. And then you go up here under settings, or excuse me, let's see. You go up here under share calendar, and you can share the Blackboard URL and then input that either in Microsoft Outlook or Google Calendar. You for sure have a Google Calendar because you have Gmail account through ACC, so either of those things would work. But that, in other words, would put your school calendar over into your regular calendar if you wanted to kind of go above and beyond the Call of Duty there, or maybe you like to keep those two things separate. That's fine too. But if you like to keep things separate, here is where our calendar is in Blackboard. And that's always what you want to rely on. Once in a while, there's some old artifacts that come up under the activity stream from older courses. We're not entirely sure why that happens. It's kind of a bug in Blackboard Ultra. But if you see contradictory information over there under the activity stream, you can ignore that and rely on this instead. So let's go back over here to the content page. Speaking of messaging, probably the most reliable way to get in touch with me is to use this little envelope icon over here, because then when I see your message, it will be tied to your particular section. And I always teach multiple sections, so if I don't know via your message what section you're in, I have no idea where to look to find you because there is no general search function in Blackboard for faculty. But always be mindful that these things kind of overlap. When you send a message through Blackboard, it goes also to our Gmail accounts. So depending on where I am at the time when I view it, I may respond to you via Gmail rather than responding to you via going back into Blackboard into the messaging system. So they kind of go back and forth. So you always want to make sure to monitor your ACC Gmail, and that does not forward automatically over into your private accounts or anything like that. So if I'm trying to get a hold of you and I can't, maybe there's a problem on your test taking, you're wearing headphones or something. I had this last semester, couldn't get in touch with the person, ended up having to track down his personal address and phone number through admissions and records, and neither of us want that. So really, this is the one lifeline that you and I have between each other in these ONL courses is email. So, all right, well, let's continue on down through the content page. There's a lot of stuff on this content page, but the vast majority of it you don't need to look at on a daily basis. And it's just something that really we're going to be dealing mainly with the top 4 or 5 categories here, especially with the first category, something you'll deal with especially early in the course, and that's the Start Here folder. The Start Here folder has all kinds of information, basic faculty information. It has the introductory videos that you have to watch as part of your orientation. And they take about an hour and 20 minutes. The fourth one is more optional. It's kind of a toolkit, tips for success on using calendars and things like that. The first 3 are required. They take probably in the neighborhood of an hour and 20 minutes. And that seems like kind of a big commitment, but we used to all bring you guys into campus for the online courses for an orientation that also lasted an hour and 20 minutes. But this is the most important hour and 20 minutes, in fact, you're going to spend in the course, really, because you got to get oriented to how the course works. So very often, if I have a Zoom conference with a student midway through the semester and we kind of get that student back on track, it's mainly through instructions that they already should have seen the first time, basically. So for the asynchronous ONL courses in particular, it's essential that you learn how the course works. This first video is the one that you're already watching, so you're already off on the right track when it comes to videos. We got your basic check-in here. You can copy and paste these things if you want, rather than print them out when you respond back to me. That's fine. However, having said that, you are liable to have read all of these things and will be held accountable for all those things. But you kind of agree to those bullet points. And then we also, you can tell me a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your hobbies, what you plan on studying or majoring in, or, if you don't know that yet, that's entirely fine also. Here's where you will download the Respondus Lockdown Browser, which is the app in which you will take your exams, which is basically, it opens up like a regular browser, but every other browser has to be closed for you to use it. So this is Respondus Monitor version where you're being filmed and all of that. I realize that's a little Big Brother-ish and kind of intrusive in a way. Nobody really likes it, but it's kind of a necessity if we're going to do these online courses without having the students come into the testing centers at the ACC campuses like they used to before COVID. Personally, I think we could get back into those testing centers, but the administration seems to think that you guys prefer to take these exams at home. If that's the case, you do need Respondus Monitor to take this course. If you do live in the Austin area, then you could come in and take the exams on an ACC computer in an accelerator, in which case you wouldn't need to download the Respondus Monitor yourself. If you're not in the Austin area, then you for sure would need the Respondus Monitor. There can be a few bugs, sometimes a few snags. Usually those are expected with various people having problems downloading it and getting it to work on their computer. But usually it ends up working out once we go through some of the steps and work out the kinks. It does work to the extent that it works well at all. It's a kind of an imperfect thing. We also have the sample test here, which is partly a test to see if your responder system is operational. That's a big part of it. But it's also a test over you having watched the first 3 videos, including the one you're watching now, but also the one on how to read the textbook and the textbook studying, which our textbook is over here. And let me go ahead and log in with History Hub 23 here. One good thing about the login that you just saw me do, once you get into this site, then all you need to do is just push the green button again when you change pages. Like, let's say, for instance, that we're going to go over here to the chapters and LOs tab. LOs here stands for learning objectives. Learning objectives are a very important part of the course. All you have to do is push the green button again, then you're into those. You want to read over the top paragraphs of this learning objective page. Those are part of what you're being tested on in the sample test. And then you see each chapter has learning objectives that go pretty much in chronological order through that chapter. The whole second video is really about how to approach reading our OER textbook, which is to say open educational resource, free online textbook. I wrote this textbook, and it'll tell you all how to adjust the, size and background and everything so that you can be comfortable reading it. All right, back over here to our Start Here folder. A lot of this stuff is general boilerplate information coming from the college, which it's good to know where it is, but you can kind of access on a need-to-know basis more than something we need to go through right now for your basic orientation, except for this folder right here, which is very important because it is kind of tucked away here in the Start Here folder, and it might be easy to kind of lose track of where it is. Here is where we have the syllabus, schedule, and course grading scale. So we have the syllabus here, and you can take a look at it online here if you want, or you can download it if you prefer to have a hard copy. It takes a second for it to pop up here. But here's all the basic course information, kind of a contract, if you will, sort of between the instructor and the student. And then we have the course schedule over here. This totally overlaps with your calendar. So you can look at either the calendar or this. It doesn't really matter which way. This one sort of breaks it down into units if you prefer to think of it as broken into 5 units. You can see we got a lot of front-loaded stuff up here in terms of checking in, taking a sample test. We want to kind of get you up and running, get you to hit the ground running. And we even have an early alert learning objective paragraph. You're going to be basically, as you go down through these LOs, you're going to be writing up your notes. Oops, excuse me, I got the wrong page there. You're going to be writing up your responses to these prompts. And I do want to see just one of them. Obviously, I don't have time to grade all of them for all the students. That'd be hundreds of hours a week. But I do want to see one of them just make sure you understand how to study for the test and what's going on. And then we have the first exam coming up here. Now, for lots of you, of course, these dates will be different if you're looking at different sections, but the format will be the same with the final withdrawal date there and everything. I am going to meet with you to go over your main project for the course individually on Google Meet for a video conference. Those dates are not written on here because those vary by student. And then we got over here, the third installment is the course grading scale. You can see we have our project here that we're going to talk about here in a minute is the artificial intelligence case study conversation. If you see AICS-C written anywhere, that's what that refers to. That's kind of your main research project for the course. We got the 5 exams up here equaling 150, and then some crumbs over here for the check-in sample test and early alert paragraph. You want to make sure to do those. Once in a while I'll have students who they end up just barely under the cutoff for a grade, and I look back at their grade book and realize they never did some of these things that would have got them up over the top. But these things are mainly to help you understand how the course works. And then we have the course grading scale, pretty all-American normal 90/80 here for the A and B, and I stick to those because these courses transfer to four-year schools. So I want to keep those standards high. I do take the C's all the way down to 60. I have a pretty expansive C category there for people that do all the work and finish all the work. I want to get you through the course. Once in a while, you're going to have people that finish 1 point below these cutoff lines. I'm sorry, but I have to have cutoff lines. So, if you don't like that, you can take a different section. But there's no extra credit or retesting. This is more like a college course. I want to see how you're doing on the first time through, or work. There's no extra credit where you work. They want you to come through the first time. You are encouraged to put extra effort into regular work, which a lot of people don't, that are asking for extra credit on the side. So it's kind of elementary school stuff there in a way. But anyway, that's the basic course grading scale. Like I said, you can kind of access these on a need-to-know basis over here. What else do we have? We have course materials. And this is where basically we have the 5-unit exams. So your multiple choice exams on textbooks are going to be found here. Let's take a look at one of these units. We got an overview. The objectives for this course, you don't really need to look at the objectives for the unit so much because those are the same thing that you have up here anyway. So I think looking at them online is easier than looking at a Word document, but that overlaps with that. It just tells you what chapters you're reading for this unit. This first unit has this early alert LO we're talking about. Each unit has one supplementary lecture where I go over what I consider to be the most difficult learning objectives for the course. But we don't have lectures for all the chapters. This is the asynchronous version of online course that you've chosen to take here, which is much more hands-off. We have other types of online courses that are a little more interactive and a little more hands-on, where the professor's coming in and giving lectures sort of the way they would in a face-to-face course or a lecture course. So we have these asynchronous setups for a reason, because there are certain students that want these type, that need more flexibility because of their work schedules, etc. So having said that, we do have these supplementary lectures that go over the more difficult LOs, and a lot of students have found those to be quite helpful in preparing for the exam. So I would always budget 30 or 45 minutes or so for those before you take the exams. And then here's where you will find the exams to take. And like I said, Respond, this lockdown browser, will just open up just like any other browser. So you would go into Blackboard. The difference being that then when you go to take this test in Blackboard, you will be able to access it. Now, when you take the exam, the reason these instructions are kind of involved here is that it will give you an option for a look at the exam results and feedback just once right after you take it. And that will include a tie-in with whatever learning objective that test item was tied to. So what's going to be on the test is always a natural question. 100% of the test items are drawn from the learning objectives. It's not worded in the exact same way as the learning objective, but if you're on top of that learning objective, you will be able to handle that test item. 90% of the learning objectives show up on the test in one way or the other, either as a correct response or as an incorrect one on some other item. So you do have that one chance for a quick look. You can't go back and look in your grade book at the exams. All right. So there we have the course materials is divided up into 5 units. Here again, if you wanted to think of the courses dividing up into 5 units, because we have the 5 exams. We also have on this front page a Unit 1 timeline, just because History 1301 covers a much wider swath of time then does History 1302, which basically begins here at 1877 and goes up into modern times. Our second, third, and fourth units, for the most part, also cover a fairly small amount of time, which is after the founding of the United States in 1776 up through the Civil War. But Unit 1 of History 1301, which covers colonial America, really covers centuries, a few centuries, and that's not even including the first chapter that goes back to the beginning of mankind. So I have this timeline here. It's not something you're going to be tested on or anything like that, but I always tell you how important it is to be oriented in time and space when you're studying history, even if we don't, for this particular class, ask about particular dates or have you recite facts like that. So this can help you with the time part. And then in terms of being oriented in space, I would always keep either an old school analog globe around if you happen to have one of those around where you live, or go to Google Earth and keep that Google Earth tab open, which is pretty easy to maneuver once you get used to it. You can spin it around and you can see, you can zoom in and see where we are geographically, because that makes history much easier to understand if you understand the chronology and geography behind what's going on there. So that's a little bit on that. I think I talked about that a little bit over in the fourth video as well. But also we have here in the folder the artificial intelligence case study and conversation, which is really basically a learning module sort of arrangement here where you go through multiple steps. Most of these steps you do on your own. The difference is step 1, which is where you're going to choose your topic. And these topics, of course, will be very different under. If you happen to be taking US 2, let's bop over there just real quickly and look at the case studies over here. You're going to have a whole different range of topics there that go up more through the 20th century. For us in this course, we're basically looking here from a period of roughly around 1492 up through 1877. And I have a bunch of ideas for kind of juicy, controversial topics here. Or you might want to try to tie a topic into your potential career path if you happen to know that already, like, for instance, criminology, education, finance, engineering, healthcare, journalism. I have some relevant topics there. But this is an important line here, which says these lists are not exhaustive. Feel free to email me with any questions. But you kind of in the earlier part of the course, you want to be thinking about what topic you want to research. And then you end up doing a lot of your research here on your own. I mean, you're free to email me with questions and all of that, but there's not an actual assignment that you submit or check in with me for steps 2 through 9. You're kind of off on your own researching this project in a lot of various ways. The kind of heart of it is you're going to go into an AI engine, probably Gemini, because that's built into your ACC Gmail. And you don't need to worry about any, you're not actually teaching the machine anything. It's kind of a self-contained system. But we're going to be looking at various aspects of your topic, how the interpretation of it has changed over the years, which is an important thing. Historiography is always evolving. What the evidence is. We like to use the word primary sources in history, but basically what we mean there is evidence. The context, what else was going on in the world at the time that may have impacted that. Nothing in history ever happens in a vacuum. It's always impacted by other things that are happening around it. We're going to try some basic fact checking because AI, part of this exercise, you're going to be learning how imperfect AI is. So this is all kind of, the ground is shifting beneath us here as we learn to deal with how we are going to use AI, but many of you are going to be using it on future jobs in some capacity or another. We hope that it's not replacing your job. It's more likely, hopefully, that you'll be working with it as part of your job, at least. And anyway, it's got some issues and hallucinations, et cetera. And so we're going to do some fact checking with it. We're also then going to go into the ACC library and do some real scholarly research and look and see if you can find some more primary sources that maybe impact your research on this topic. Primary sources in history are, like I said, evidence from that time period. So if you're talking about something from the Civil War, it's stuff that was manufactured, generated back during the Civil War, like a letter or a speech or a photograph or whatever. An analogy would be in archaeology. Their primary sources there would be bones and pottery or DNA that they're pulling up out of the dirt. But then an archaeologist doesn't take a shovel of dirt and go throw it on your desk and say, here's some archaeology. They go write an article or a presentation or a documentary, and then that's what you see. That in history, that's what's called the secondary sources, which is to say books, articles, documentaries, whatever. Then we're going to take a look at some real more in-depth scholarly research from the ACC library, because the AI research tends to be fairly shallow, not always, but it's really just referring things that are otherwise online. Then we're going to look a little bit over here at the History Hub, rear defogger, and see if we can see any fallacies within the arguments that you see about your topic. So the rear defogger is something I set up as a way to help us think critically about history, and deals a lot with common fallacies that we fall into when we think of the past. And these are common fallacies that all of us fall into. I call them the tire ruts in our brain. And there's kind of a natural instinct, especially if you care passionately about a subject. And we're going to have you think a little bit about lessons present and future. What questions does this topic raise? And then finally, here you will meet with me on Google Meet, and you and I will talk for 20 minutes about your research. And this is nothing to get too wound up about or anything like that. It's going to be low pressure. Having said that, of course, you want to be prepared. It'll go fine if you're prepared. Put it that way. And here's where you will find the link for the schedule. And there's nothing in there right now because it's our appointments aren't up yet, and we're not that time of the semester. But that's where you will be able to find a slot to meet with me. I would schedule roughly around 8 hours or so, maybe 8 or 9 hours overall for this assignment. Now, if you don't want to go through all the extra steps, you can just go partway through it and submit that in written form, and you can get partial credit for it. That would be, I believe, up to, instead of 90 points, you could get up to 75 points if you just want to do the written version. I'm not going to mark it all up or anything like that, but I'll look it over. And that's if you want to go just partway through the project. Okay, so, and then also we have the link to the textbook in here. I believe on that second video, the initial link I used for the History Hub textbook is actually in the old Blackboard version, but you can access that from here, or you can always just look up that from any browser. So you don't need to be inside Blackboard to get to the History Hub. Also, it has the password here, History Hub 23, with the 2 H's capitalized. So now, if WordPress goes down, which it rarely does, but once in a while it does, that we also have backups, PDF backups to all of the chapters. And you can also access software like text-to-speech there from the PDF version as well. I would advise just looking at it online if possible, but not just on your phone, because it gets all crunched up and doesn't format down to a mobile device like that. But if you look at it online on a big screen, then it's a little more interactive. You can use links to dictionary or Wikipedia or watch videos that are embedded in it and things like that. It's a little bit nicer. Okay, further on down the list here, we have tutoring and coaching. These are both valuable services. This is a class really taught in, kind of team taught in a way, potentially. Coaching has to do more with sort of general study skills, life skills, calendars, getting things together as a student, whereas online tutoring is more topic specific, disciplinary, which is to say, we have tutors that deal with history specifically. But of course, the first person you want to deal with, basically just me. I'm always here to help you, and I know the course better than any of those people even. So I'm sort of your front line of defense there. We got college-wide policies, services, etc. Like I said, you can access on kind of a need-to-know basis. And we talked about those up here too. Some of these kind of overlap with that, but for college policies and resources, things like accessibility, financial aid, learning lab, student services, technical support, etc. All of those things are tucked up under that Start Here folder as well. One last thing we have down here, we have Zoom meetings. Of course, that's how I meet with you for student office hours. We have I call it a Back to Basics primer. If you're really rusty, you're new to a course, you might want to kind of take a peek at a textbook from a lower level. I know I've been in that situation before myself. I get free tuition to take classes when I wanted ACC. Sometimes I take ones way outside of my area of expertise. I kind of secretly wish I could peek at an 8th grade textbook, as I'm before I go read the regular one. That's natural for all of us. This is a really good one here, actually, is USA History in Brief, which is the textbook that immigrants use when they're naturalizing as citizens to come into the United States. They have to take a citizenship test, which, by the way, I have a link to. Very few native-born Americans can actually pass that test. We have a link to it in the library there on History Hub if you're interested. But anyway, huge font, very short chapters. It doesn't have anything at all to do with our test, but it gives you a very broad overview of the period we're studying, just in case you have very fundamental questions about it. And then I also have some sort of YouTube videos, which I have kind of mixed feelings about. But they also don't have to do with the test, but they might kind of alert you to the basic concepts of the course. Wisdom Wall, you can add things that you wish you knew when you first started the course, frequently asked questions. USA History in Brief, that's actually the same textbook that I was just talking about, campus carry, etc. And then also we got instructions for the course evaluations, which would be at the very end of the course, and we appreciate you taking the time to look at those as well. So that's a little bit what Blackboard will look like, kind of the general lay of the land. I will mention one thing finally, which is that history is always an ongoing argument. Once you move up from that kind of foundational base of knowledge and facts, and you get into interpretation, it's naturally subjective. It's natural for us to disagree with each other. That's totally okay. I just want to say that wherever you stand politically, everyone is welcome in this course, period. And you don't have to agree with me. You're welcome and encouraged even to disagree with me. But I guess that's about it for today. And you can move on now to the second video. We're really going to dive into History Hub, our OER textbook, how to read it effectively as you prepare for the exams. I'm sure lots of other questions will pop up as we move along. There's another third video on my teaching philosophy. And then we have a fourth video, kind of tips for success as well. So thank you for taking the time and have a good day. On to video 2. Goodbye.